This is the first time we've been up Highway 13. That was an airstrike. First time we've been up on this road for the last week.
For the past 40 years, I've watched the warmongers find better ways of killing. Their weapons have changed, but so has something else. We who report it have become casualties too. Now, they are shooting the messenger.
Right, let's get away. Come on, quick.
When you start in this business of reporting wars and conflicts, what some have nicknamed the destruction business, you can convince yourself that you are somehow immune. We're not combatants, we say. We're on nobody's side. The shells and the bullets are not for us. We have that comforting notion that because of the word press on the side of our vehicles and our cameras, it's our insurance policy. We are protected. But not today. Today the word press could kill you.
The kidnapping and beheading of the American correspondent Daniel Pearl in Pakistan shocked the world. So did the murder of the Russian reporter Anna Politkovskaya. Their deaths made the headlines. But in the last 18 months alone, over 100 journalists and cameramen have been killed worldwide. 100. Newsrooms like ITN's in London send their reporters and camera crews to the fighting wherever it happens, whatever the dangers.
The United Nations and NATO say that the punitive...
There was a time when we were regarded as impartial spectators on nobody's side. But then we too were targeted. Perhaps it began in the war in Bosnia, and perhaps it was our fault. Given its shocking savagery, it became more and more difficult for us to ditch our humanity and maintain our neutrality.
It's now 7 o'clock in the morning, and this hotel, which is surrounded by Serb militia, is still under attack.
There was a significant change in the Balkan War when, I think for the first time, perhaps, journalists began to be targeted. Some journalists were seen as extensions of the government of the country from which they came, rather than independent journalists working to try and uncover the truth in an independent and courageous manner.
All sides began to accuse us of no longer being impartial, of supporting one faction against the other. They were wrong. But then in the invasion of Iraq in 2003, we were compromised further. To protect us, but really to protect themselves, the military took us firmly under their wing. They called it embedding. It meant that you went where they wanted you to go, see what they wanted you to see, in the hope that you would report what they wanted you to report.
Being embedded with Allied troops can actually take you to the point of the spear, places you couldn't possibly go, sure, acting as an independent. But independents who are not embedded are able to go their own way and to give a perspective which is unadulterated on the conflict that they're covering.
That's the best bit.
Terry Lloyd was a veteran ITN reporter, and his crew was one of the first independent, non-embedded teams to operate in Iraq.
Tributes to ITV's Terry Lloyd, killed in Iraq fighting. Good evening. We're sad to report tonight that one of our correspondents, Terry Lloyd, is believed to have been killed while reporting on the war in Iraq.
Terry and his team were caught in crossfire. They were first wounded by Iraqi forces, but it was finally the shells from an American tank that killed them.
From all the evidence, that it is very likely that one member of Red Platoon deliberately shot Terry in the head while he was in the back of an ambulance that was moving away from the battle space. that man deserves to be in a court of law. We're not going to get there because the Americans simply will not release the information or the person. Up until the time that we lost Terry, I think there was a false feeling, as it turned out, of invulnerability. And so you kind of did think, really, that we'd be okay. And we were very careful to make sure that we sent only experienced people into dangerous situations. But there were times when you could almost clearly draw a front line on a particular conflict and know where that front line was. In the case of Terry and his team, we thought we knew where that line was. They thought they knew where that line was, and inadvertently they crossed it.
If there was another occasion when you could send two reporters to a war zone, one is embedded and therefore relatively safe, and one like Terry, who can go off as a kind of almost a maverick on his own, would you still do that,
yes,
knowing what happened to Terry?
Yes, I would. You know, he was doing what he wanted to do. We'd given him and his team the best preparation we possibly could. We felt that the mission he was on was journalistically worthwhile. And, you know, 10 seconds either way of the incident and they would have survived.
Yeah.
But, of course, I still feel guilty. 5 years on, I can't shake that off, and I never will.
Terry, cameraman Fred Nerak, and translator Hussein Osman were the first journalists to die in the war.
Another victim was the Iraqi journalist Atwa Bajat. She was a popular news reporter for Al Arabiya television. She was known for the passion and professionalism of her reporting, and it was probably what killed her. Her mother was a Shia, her father a Sunni, but there were no divided loyalties in this reporter. She was loyal to her country, and she despaired as she watched it being ripped apart.
Atwar was an Iraqi who was watching her own country invaded, coming under occupation, and all of the things that came with that occupation. Every single Iraqi was watching avidly to find out what was happening to themselves and to their country.
She was there right amongst it, as the post-war peace disintegrated.
I know she was abducted, I know she was taken, and I know she was shot. I do think that Atwar was especially targeted because she was a journalist, because she was out there on the front lines, visible, a woman on television that everyone could see every day. She was famous. She was saying what was happening in the country, and if you told the truth about what was happening in Iraq at that time, you would upset extremists on all sides.
2 years ago, when the Sunnis attacked the Shia al-Askari shrine in Atwar's hometown of Samarra, her despair turned to anger. Iraqi fighting Iraqi. This, she said, was the one story she had to cover herself. It would be her last.
The day that they blew that up, I mean, it was almost like when they killed Atwar, it was almost like a match for the shrine. It was almost as if they had just killed Iraq. It's like they had killed what Iraq is. It's a country where you have Christians and Muslims and Shias and Sunnis. It's this amazing, amazing ancient country with all of these different communities in it. I really felt like they were targeting people like Atwar. They were targeting Iraq itself. Iraq itself is
In April 2003, Sami al-Hajj, a Sudanese cameraman working for Al Jazeera Arabic TV, was seized by the Pakistanis on the Afghan border. He was held on suspicion of being involved in terror and handed over to the American forces, who imprisoned him in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba.
The allegation is that he received training as a terrorist because he was trained as a cameraman with Al Jazeera. Like so much of the intelligence, and I use the word intelligence loosely here, of this war on terror, they were wrong. But they grabbed SAMI, thinking that he would give them information about bin Laden, and the folk in Guantanamo, I think, honestly believe that SAMI's a terrorist. They're crazy. He's no more a terrorist than my granny.
In May, after more than 6 years in detention, he was released without charge.
I've been waiting for this moment for the past 7 years, and I wish my family could have been here with me, but this is fate. I want to highlight the reasons for my detention. One of the reasons was to silence the work of free media.